Hey everyone, welcome to Info Screen. This is Krish. So here today we are going to discuss about some 5 key points which we have to keep in mind for protecting the EBS volumes if you go to Amazon EC2. So this is a very familiar service. All of you know that EBS, which stands for Elastic Block Store, and this is a storage system which is basically used to connect your instances, and it's a kind of volume storage, right? So how can we protect it? So what are the key options, or what are the things which we have to keep in mind for ensuring that our EBS volume is protected? So the first one of the show is basically the EBS Public Snapshots. So whenever you have a EBS volume, what we normally do is that if you want to have a proper backup of the EBS volume, we take something called as a snapshots. And in the snapshots, by default, whatever snapshot we're taking, it's a backup, right? So the snapshot you're taking is by default private. So what happens is that if you want to share this particular volume to certain AWS accounts or maybe your peer accounts, etc., it's definitely possible. We can share the snapshot with our co-accounts in the company and all. But the problem is that if you make your snapshots public, or if you basically make it to all accounts in your organization, or if you try to share it without proper least privilege rule, or basically without proper understanding, that is going to make you in trouble. So that's the reason why avoid EBS public snapshots. And in that case where you have to have a EBS public snapshots, you must make sure that that particular things are properly secured and accessible only by the authorized AWS accounts. That's the first thing which we have to do. The second and the most important thing is that make sure that your EBS volume is properly encrypted. If you have EBS volume which contains some critical information, always make sure that we encrypt our EBS volume. And the best option which is available for encrypting the EBS volume is what we call as an AWS KMS. Using the AWS KMS, we can basically bring our own key files if I want, or we can use AWS generated keys to encrypt your EBS volume. That's a mandatory thing which we have to follow if you're stealing the sensitive data. Encrypt your EBS volumes if that is having secure data. Also, you can go for the volume level things like we can go for this BitLocker or maybe TrueCrypt, etc. like that. But again, if you go to AWS, the easiest and the best, most secure option is what we call as a EBS encryption using AWS KMS. The third option we have to keep in mind is that when you go for an AWS EBS, it's very important to make sure that, like the same way your volume is encrypted, you have to also make the snapshots are encrypted. If your volume is encrypted, you have to make sure your snapshots are also encrypted. That's a very important thing which we have to keep in mind. And the fourth one is that when you basically go for a volumes, the biggest thing that people I have seen that miss is that they forget to tag the volume. The problem is that now, so Krish, how can the tagging be a most important thing? The reason is because when you deal with a lot of EBS volumes and all, it's very important that you manage the tagging properly, you follow a proper naming conventions, and you properly tag the volumes. Because if you know how to properly tag the volumes, or if you know what are the best practices for tagging, that can help you to make sure that you don't lose the visibility over the volumes. You know which is basically used for what is critical, what is not critical, so you can basically manage it effectively. So tagging is one of the most important best practices which we have to follow, either for security, for cost management, for performance, for monitoring, for multiple purposes, for billing and payment, for everything. Tagging is a very important thing which we have to keep in mind. And the last but the most important thing is what we call as a snapshots. So when you go for a snapshot, always make sure that what is a snapshot? It's a volume backup, as we discussed, right? So we are taking the regular snapshots based on the RPO. Like in every company, we have a RPO, that is a recovery point objective defined. Based on that, we will take the snapshots, like maybe every 2 hours, every 3 hours, every 1 hour, every 24 hours. You can make it as per the requirements. But managing those snapshots live is a very important thing. Now we have a by default option available in the AWS cloud platform for managing the snapshots in a proper basis. Like we can make a proper snapshot management cycle where it will get automatically created and it will get deleted after a particular time you have mentioned, maybe after 3 days or 5 days, it will automatically get deleted. So make sure that you manage the life cycle of your snapshots very effectively. So these are the 5 things which we have to keep in mind while protecting your EBS volume. Just to recap what we have discussed: the EBS public snapshots, make sure that you secure the EBS public snapshots, make sure the volume is properly encrypted, make sure the snapshot is also encrypted, make sure we use a proper volume tagging options, and make sure that you have a proper snapshots lifecycle policy. Thank you so much, team. See you in the next video. Bye bye.